Today we're going to talk about commanders that are okay to take to 5-5-5-1, maxing just the first 3 skills and only unlocking the 4th skill to get the majority of the value that the commander can offer. And the crazy thing is that throughout the history of Rise of Kingdoms, there have been some real gems, commanders that only get slightly better when you max them out. And it's about half the sculptures to just max the first 3 skills compared to completely maxing out the commander. So in this video, we're going to follow up to what I've done in the past, where we tier list out every single commander that's worth looking at for a 5-5-5-1 investment. And combined, these videos have gotten, at this point, I think hundreds of thousands of views, so consider subscribing to the channel. Let's get a look now at the best 5-5-5-1 commanders, baby. And before we jump into the tier list, I want to emphasize the weird direction the game has gone, because we almost had like a golden age of 5-5-5-1 commanders with Joan Prime, Skippy Prime, and more. But now expertise skills seem to be getting better and better. So for example, if we look at Ragnar Lodbrok, his active skill, 2000 damage factor, 3 targets, and the main target takes another 600 factor. It's 300 per second over 2 seconds, right? Meanwhile, the expertise makes it so that instead of 2000 factor, you do 2,200 to each of those targets. That's 600 total more factor. And then all troops hit by the AoE now take the damage over time. That's another 1,200 factor. Holy smokes, we're talking about 1,800 extra damage factor on the expertise, which used to be just like the base level of power of an active skill. You'd be happy to get 1,800 damage factor. So the point I'm trying to make is that expertise skills seem to have gotten better than ever and more important than ever, which is why it's been a long time since I went to go make a video like this and update my list. And I do need to give a shout out to 2377, the kingdom where my main account is now, because in Kingdom chat, I asked like, hey, what videos would you guys like to see? And someone was like, you know, you could update your 5-5-5-1 list. Not that anyone around here is taking commanders to 5-5-5-1, but you know, it was a great suggestion, and so here we are. Let's jump into the tier list. All right, so let's talk about how we have this thing laid out. I've pulled from the list of literally every commander, the ones that I think would be candidates to bring to that 5-5-5-1 state. And I've got all of them up over here in the candidates section. So we're going to drag them down into different categories. The first category is that the expertise is OP. Yeah, you could take it to 5-5-5-1, but as I showed you with Ragnar Prime, brother, that expertise is insane. What are we talking about? You should max him, okay? So 5-5-5-1 in this category is more like a stepping stone to maxing them, because you should just max them, all right? The next category is commanders that are safe to take to 5-5-5-1. Max the first 3 skills. Whether or not you max the next skill is up to you, and you can leave them there. And I think a perfect example of this is actually going to be Huo. Because a lot of people will say, don't even expertise him. And I think that the last skill of Huo is still very good, like you want it. But a lot of people will say you shouldn't even unlock the expertise because it sort of makes you lose rage. It doesn't sort of make you lose rage. I mean, when you kill a march, you lose your rage bar, and you get some benefits for that. But there's a lot of people who would say that's just not worth it. So he's a great example of a commander I think you could take to 5-5-5-1, and that might just be fine. Now, he's been around for a while, so like I get a little anxious investing in Huo, but I think he would be a safe commander to 5-5-5-1, which brings us to commanders that like might be good at 5-5-5-1, but are like risky or bad to invest in now. And I'm going to have to, as we go through this list, try to figure out which of those commanders might fit there. Oh, here's one. Skippy Prime. He's the perfect example. He's very good at 5-5-5-1, but like starting Skippy Prime in 2025, like yes, he is meta now, but he is likely to be one of the very first commanders that gets replaced if new infantry drops. So risky, right? Perfect example. And then lastly, we've got sort of niche role or bad. Just stop. No, do not. And people ask about these commanders, so we're going to put them in here. But an example would be Sargon as a commander that is either niche role or bad. A lot of people would say he's just bad. Actually, for swarming garrisons, I think he's really solid. But either way, that would qualify as niche role. Now, the funny thing is that I made a video proving, by the way, that if you bring him to 5550, I think it's better than 5551 or 5552. Like unlocking the fourth skill on Sargon was actually a DPS decrease, which is really a weird design, but that was what the design was. And anyways, we're going to put him in niche role and bad. So we have examples here of each category. All right. So let's rank the rest of the commanders. Gosh darn it. Now that we know the rating system, we've talked about how we tier them out. Let's get a look at Arthur. And Arthur is busted. Look, I mean, we're going to start by evaluating the three commanders that I said in a recent video you should swap to with the commander swap event. And it's in part because their expertise is just completely OP. So is Arthur someone you could 5551? I mean, yeah, but like you should just max them, which is why they're in the expertise is OP category. Liu Cha is in the same boat. Could you work on Liu Cha 5551? Like, yeah, no, I mean, start using him, but you should max him. He's not one of those commanders you take to 5551 and go, oh, great, I'm done. No, no, you're not. Keep working on him. He's outstanding. Philip is one of those commanders. What does his expertise skill do? It gives you a chance to use active skills all over again. It's so busted. Yeah, no, like you need to get his expertise skill. It's very, very, very good. The expertise is OP. It's not a coincidence that like these are commanders that I said you should consider swapping to, right? But this brings us to an interesting topic, Nevsky. Depending on who you talk to, Nevsky is at this point either niche role bad or good to 5551, but bad or risky to invest in now. And I think we'll put him in that category where I would say like, yeah, no, he's good as 5551. Better if you put more skills in him. But at this point, very risky to start an investment in Nevsky. I think the only reason you would do that is if you're like a 3 to 4 March Cav player, maybe. And even then, Nevsky starting that in 2025, given that he released in what, 2020? Yeah. Yo, that's a stretch, okay? I don't remember the exact year he released, but it doesn't really matter. Which brings us to Shajar. What a weirdo. So her expertise is going to make it so that you give a defense and a normal attack boost to nearby marches when you heal them, or to any march when you heal them. And I think it's okay, but I don't think it's busted. But the other thing is that Shajar is in like kind of a weird spot where I think she's going to be a really cool investment because I hope that the game design moves in the direction of giving us some insane area of effect damage synergy with, the true damage that she can do. But I'm like very anxious that the game might just leave her in a completely irrelevant state. And it's like, well, what? And I say completely irrelevant state. That's not true at all. She's good in Canyon. She has meta uses in the field, but like there's a lot of people who I feel moved in on Shajar and were like, but the power level's not the same as other commanders we've gotten. This is the same of Belisarius Prime, which we're going to talk about in a minute here. There's going to be people who like swear by Belisarius Prime. They'll tell you you're an absolute moron if you're not using Belisarius Prime, okay? We'll talk about that, okay? But for Shajar, is she safe to 5551? Man, I might put her in this category for now, and we revisit it. That's where I think I land on this one. I think that's where I land. It's a very tough position because you're basically either under the assumption that the game devs are going to release like a new commander that really elevates her field relevance, or you've already got a pairing for her that you feel gives really big field relevance. I don't know that her expertise is totally busted though, but like in Canyon, she's really good for obvious reasons. But anyways, you kind of need leadership gear. It's a nuanced topic. We'll revisit Shajar once we see how the rest of this list shakes up. So that brings us to Justinian, who I'd say is a niche role commander. You'd only consider him if you had multiple cavalry, and it probably don't take him to 5551. Then you've got Sebatai, the new commander. Gosh, I don't think he's a great candidate for this. Let's go look at his skills and remind ourselves sort of what they do. Weirdly, he's not in the list in game. Am I misremembering, or was he here and now he's not here? Anyways, he's not in my list of unrecruited commanders. So let me go back to the breakout of his skills. All right, we're going to start with the expertise skill. If this commander's troop is attacking a troop on the map, their active skill inflicts burn on the target for 2 seconds. And whenever the target is hit with a basic attack, it has a 50% chance to take 20% more normal damage for the next 1 second. I mean, it's okay. I don't know if I'd say that's insane, honestly. I don't think it is. It's fine. His other skills, when this commander's troop launches a basic attack while outside of territory, oof. Yeah, I mean, I think we're gonna drop this guy in a niche role. I generally didn't think he was very good for field, and I certainly don't think at 5551 he's gonna be very good. So we'll have to test though, because like if combo ends up being completely cracked in and of itself, that would be pretty funny. But for now, I think we're gonna just drop him in a niche role. This brings us to Guan. And this is the reason why 5551 videos were popular in the first place, is commanders like Guan that legitimately are outstanding even without the expertise. He is the prime example of that. In fact, the next couple commanders, William, XY, like these are commanders that were outstanding even without the expertise. They're the reason why this was in part such a popular thing to do. But I think they're very risky to start investing in right now. I really do. I would not recommend that. I feel like the power level is obviously there as 5551. They are a part of strong lineups now. Some of these, like, I'd actually say XY is more niche role. This is like a 3 cav march thing at this point. We could say William is more niche role. Like, he's more of like a... that's debatable. We'll leave him where he is. You could argue he's more of a 3 cav march thing, which I think is true at this point. But the power level of William's 4th skill is so underestimated, it's actually insane. He is like one of the reasons why 5551 was ever so popular. It's so good. And while we're just talking about like this category of commander, we could take Joan and put her here too. One of the OG commanders where 5551 is actually just quite outstanding. And technically with her, you want the first couple skills and maybe the last skill to be maxed out. So like 5515 is more what you want for her. But I think that's where we land for those commanders. They are amazing at 5551, but it's 2025. Those are very risky investments to start now. Okay. In fact, while we're on this category, we're going to put Attila in here. We're talking about old commanders, and I'm going to put him in niche role or bad. You have to have the expertise, and he's mostly like a rally garrison thing at this point, in my opinion, rather than a field commander. And even with the release of combo, and that he tested poorly with combo, and also I would say that the expertise makes it so you can't be silenced. This is just like a huge jump in power level. So I would say, for all common sense applications, niche role is where he goes. All right. For your like typical hardworking, open fielder, average player. All right. So also, gosh, I mean, we're talking about old commanders. Let's move Nebu down. You see, these are easy to rank. Outstanding at 5551. Gets you a lot of his value, but not a good invest right now. In fact, so much so that I'm going to drop him down here, even though he is really a cut above some of these other ones in terms of like, that's niche role. The problem is that like if you invest in Nebu now, generally speaking, as an example, if you have two of any troop type, okay, 2 marches of any troop type, I really dislike investing in the 4th strongest commander now, because that means that as soon as a new gen shows up, you're going to just get rid of the 4th strongest. Nebu's almost certainly your 4th strongest for, archers if you're starting him now. So I think that's too much risk to do. Okay. And Honda, he's just bad at this point. Every now and then people ask about him, so I put him in here, but like Honda's just bad. Trajan is just niche, and you do need to max him. So he's a terrible candidate for this. And the reason people ask about this is because they see that all the top Canyon teams use Trajan, and he is meta standard. And like, everybody uses Trajan. Everybody uses Trajan in Canyon. That is a top tier team, but not at 5551. That's not where it's at. So this brings us just a small number of commanders that we still need to talk about. Let's talk about Belisarius Prime. I'm going to say that he is a great example of a commander that is niche role, And what I'd say is, if you're a Garrison Swarmer, he's outstanding. But for most open fielders, he's not where it's at. Certainly not where it's at for a 5.5.5.1, because the expertise is very, very critical. The expertise is like the whole kit on him. It makes it so that the target takes more damage, and it's basically like a debuff that applies at instant speed when you're attacking something. So that's a great effect. When he's expertise, he is good, but I would say that this is a 5.5.5.1 list. He is like, I guess you could say he belongs in the expertise is OP category, except that he's just a niche role commander. What are we talking about? So I think he's really good for people that swarm garrisons. That's kind of where I sit with him. And I think if you talk to most people about what is open field meta for cavalry 2 marches, what they're going to tell you is probably going to be Arthur and Philip and Huo and Joan. And Belly is not there. So if he's not in what most people would say for top 4 open field for cavalry, that's very much niche role, right? You could make your own judgments as to whether or not you'd swap him in for your lineup. For players that are, 6, 7 marches, sure. But for your like average, hardworking, F2P low spend and Rise of Kingdoms, like I don't think he's where it's at these days. So that brings us to 4 commanders left, and I'm trying to figure out how to rank them. I feel like William might be safe to 5.5.5.1. Like, I wouldn't say his expertise is OP, but it is very good in a way that is very different than these other commanders, right? Like his expertise, if he uses his active skill or he gets slowed, he starts throwing around shields. And like, those are really valuable. In fact, let's look in game and talk about how much shielding factor we're talking about. Whenever this commander's troop uses an active skill or is slowed, it cleanses all slow effects from 3 nearby allied friendly troops, including this commander's troop, then grants them a damage-absorbing mighty shield of 1,000 factor for 2 seconds. So every 10 seconds or so, you're clearing slows and getting 3,000 factor of shielding. I mean, I think we need to put him in the must-max category, right? Not that it's a high priority compared to some of the other commanders, but that's a power level that's a cut above the other 2 commanders that we're talking about in the 5.5.5.1 category. All right, we bump him up, which brings us to Hermann Prime. I want to do Hermann Prime. He will use his active skill all over again when he applies enough poison stacks. That to me feels like a pretty OP active skill. I'm going to put him in must expertise. The expertise is OP. Reactivations of active skills are disgusting. I think that's very good. And I also think that Asher Benapal has a very OP active skill, or rather expertise skill, where when you use his active skill, you get a buff. And it's a variety of different things that the buff will qualify for, but that feels very powerful and kind of breakable. So I think we go like that, which brings us to Zhuge Liang. So his expertise skill, we're going to have to look in game at this one. Let's go get a peek. Upon entering combat, you gain the Marquee effect. You know what's funny is like, if you asked 100 governors in Rise of Kingdoms, tell me exactly how Zhuge Liang's Marquee effect works, I would bet you that 95 or higher out of 100 would not be able to explain exactly how this Marquee effect works. I mean, if they looked at it, they could, but if you ask them from the top of their head, explain it, no shot, right? So upon entering combat, this commander's troop gains the Marquee effect, which increases damage dealt by 10% for 15 seconds. When they deal skill damage with the burning skill or the Marquee skill, their troop gains 30 rage. I mean, a 10% damage boost is nice, and gaining rage is really nice. And what else do we have here? If their troop already has the Marquee effect and it contains archers, it will dispel the Marquee effect and deal direct damage to 3 nearby enemy troops, damage factor 1,500, whenever they use an active skill. I mean, that's a lot of damage. I think we got to put this in the must-max category, honestly. Yeah, I think you got to max Zhuge Liang as well. All right, we move him down, put him in the list. And there you go. This is, I think, what things look like here. Let's do the double check. So you can see, by the way, why I haven't made an updated 5.5.5.1 list, because I feel like 5.5.5.1 has almost gone the way of the dinosaur at this point. The expertise is OP on Ragnar, on Arthur, on Liu Che, Philip, on William, Herman, Asher Benapal, Zhuge Liang. I think that the ones where you might get away with a 5551 is probably Huo and Shajar, and we'll go look in game and do the double check on those. The commanders that were like iconically outstanding for this are at this point extremely risky to start investing in 2025, in my opinion. You've got Skippy, Nevsky, Joan, Guan, and also William. And I would say of these, like, Joan is very popular, but both like Joan and Skippy are on the verge of falling off, and Nevsky. So, and some people would say that some of them have already fallen off. That's not great. Okay. So these are projects that are just very risky to start. And I want to emphasize on this that my general strategy for a new player is not to pick commanders that are on the verge of extinction, but to suffer for a time with slightly suboptimal, combinations, but keep investing in the new hotness so that you always have the new hotness, and eventually your collection kind of catches up. But if you take a shortcut and say, well, today I'm going to go do some of these commanders down here, the issue is that you end up in a situation where you just put sculptures into things that get retired in short order. And I know that sucks, but like, way better to avoid that entirely and just pick the future stuff, especially because like these commanders are not bad at 5551 up top. Just the expertise is OP. It's better. So like I wouldn't start investments in this row now. Not above the other rows anyways. And then niche roll or bad means that it either does something very specific and you need to know exactly what you're doing, like Trajan for Canyon. Okay, but like, are you really maxing a commander just for Canyon? I get the Canyons in more game modes than ever. You have Lost Canyon, Sunset Canyon, Cross Alliance versus Alliance Canyon, Cross Kingdom Canyon. I mean, there's a lot of canyons these days that we're crossing, but yeah, I don't know. I would say these commanders, you need to know exactly what you're doing to start investing in them. Exactly what you're doing. And you might need to max them out in order to even get the value. So not only would they potentially not fill the 5551 criteria, but also you need to know exactly what you're doing for investing in them. And this list is really oriented towards open field anyways, all right? The final thing we need to do in this video is just look in again at the skills on Huo, look in again at the skills on Shajar, and go, yeah, 5551 is a safe place. And like, if you want to do more later, you can. So let's go get a peek. Let's start with Shajar, since she was the first one that popped up here. We got to look at her skills. Active skill, depending on if she's the primary or the secondary, is going to do different things. She's got the Mighty Heal sort of true damage approach or the skill damage approach. Second skill, obviously amazing. Health and march speed is busted. This is actually a very powerful skill. Third skill, you take less normal damage, and whenever you use an active skill, you heal nearby friendly troops. Very cool. All right. Next skill that might theoretically, we might just keep this at 1 point. Ooh, but this is a pretty good skill. 10% damage taken reduction. Then it's got a big heal and a damage reduction when you get low enough health. I honestly think this skill is very good. I almost feel like 5515 would be preferable. In fact, it all depends on how much you value mighty healing other nearby allied units, and if you're in the healing mode or not. But I would say that if you're in healing mode, I almost feel like you need this expertise to be getting max value from her. Yeah, she's not the best candidate for 5551. Like, I don't want to say that this expertise is OP. I'm not sure that it is, right? I don't think that it is. But her skills, like, are strong, and I think you would want to keep going with them, quite frankly. So even in today's day and age, like, they just don't build 5551 commanders like they used to, right? Like, the incentive is genuinely there to keep going with their skills, and I suppose it makes sense, doesn't it? That's how they would design commanders. And then you've got Huo, who I guess I skipped and passed by for some reason. Anyways, his active skill, big damage factor, single target, march speed reduction. Second skill, attack and when you're outside of territory. You get march speed and damage to archers. Next skill. If this commander's troop has been on the map for more than 30 seconds, or has fought in at least one battle already, or has previously triggered Autumn Wind, for the first 15 seconds of entering combat, their troop deals 30% more skill damage and requires 150 less rage. That is very powerful. After 15 seconds, you deal 10% more normal damage, which is basically borderline worthless. And then over here, this is showing the expertise version of this skill. The expertise is enhancing the final skill. So the final skill gives you 30% defense. You deal 20% more damage factor. And you recover 1,500 slightly wounded units whenever you defeat an enemy troop. It's got an 8-second cooldown. Does not reset after exiting combat. Whereas the expertise version is 35% defense, 25% skill damage, 3,000 healing factor. Triggering Autumn Wind as well. So you drop your rage and you gain this Autumn Wind effect, which gives you more skill damage and reduces your rage cost, but at the cost of losing your rage bar, which really sucks. So there's like a whole video, I suppose, that could be made as to like why you would or would not expertise Huo. But the long story short is there are people, including in 1960, which like, if you're not looking at what a kingdom like that is doing in the open field, like, I don't know, I guess you just don't want to learn from the folks that like nobody seems to want to queue against in KVK. But anyways, so yeah, like if you look at what they do, a lot of them do not unlock the expertise skill. So I think there's justification here for 5551 and honestly room to continue to invest up to 5555 and not unlocking the expertise skill. Yeah. So TLDR in 2025, commanders seem to be designed for being expertised and to incentivize you to go all the way to expertise. And you really don't need to look much further than Ragnar Prime to see exactly how busted that is. If you enjoyed the vid, throw a like on here, consider subscribing. I hope you found it helpful. You may alternatively enjoy my investment tier list, which is just a bigger picture look at like, hey, what commanders are good to invest in. You'll find a tremendous amount of overlap, obviously, with this video because yeah, I mean, if it's not a good commander to invest in, then it wouldn't be good at 5551 either. But you should go check it out if you're interested in commander investments, because you watch this whole video to the end. So it's basically exactly what you're looking for. Check the video out. Until next time, you have fun smashing your enemies. Take care, everybody.